Coming up on World News, the next New Orleans, the next Katrina. Can your community withstand a major flood? Levees across the U.S. need fixing. Where? What's being done to protect you? See why more and more Americans are watching World News with Charles Gibson.
Good day. I'm Charles Gibson at ABC News headquarters in New York, and I welcome you to the World News webcast. So why not begin with the headlines? For weeks, senators from both parties have been objecting to President Bush's plan to send 21,000 additional troops to Iraq. And today they are beginning to agree on a single resolution of protest. By our count, more than 50 senators are leaning toward a resolution sponsored by Virginia Republican John Warner. That resolution would oppose the additional deployment, but would vow to protect the money that Congress is granting to pay for the war effort. Meanwhile, the outgoing head of U.S. troops in Iraq says he favored a surge of troops half the size of the surge that was initiated by the president. The world's largest oil company announced today it made $39.5 billion. That's profit. $39.5 billion last year, the highest profit ever recorded by any company in history. The windfall came almost entirely thanks to those high oil prices. In another economic note, Americans may be making more money than ever, but they're also spending more money than ever. Indeed, spending everything they make, plus a little more. The government says the country's savings rate was negative 1% last year, meaning Americans are dipping into savings or going into debt. That is the lowest rate since 1933. And 3 weeks after China became only the third country to destroy a satellite with a missile, the government there says it wants to create a space treaty. That comes as engineers were warning that the debris field from the destroyed satellite is so large it could threaten objects like other satellites and even the International Space Station. And you can check in with the TV version of World News for more on today's headlines.
This is World News, available anytime, anywhere you want it.
Today on the webcast, we're going to wish David Letterman a happy 25th anniversary by looking at some of his funniest late-night moments. And then we'll take a look at a new smoking ban in Paris, believe it or not, which is bidding adieu to lighting up in public places. And finally, turning lemons into lemonade, vintage cigarette machines that are now dispensing palm-sized pieces of art. But we begin with an effort by the Congress to declare to the country and to the president that there is strong opposition to how he has waged war in Iraq. That opposition comes in the form of a resolution opposing the troop surge, as well as the questioning of the outgoing commander in Iraq. So take a listen to some of the debate today on Capitol Hill.
We have a real opportunity for the Senate to speak clearly. Every senator will have a chance to vote on whether he or she supports or disagrees with the president's plan to send more troops into the middle of a civil war.
I question seriously the judgment that was employed in your execution of your responsibilities in Iraq. And we have paid a very, very heavy price in American blood and treasure because of what is now agreed to by literally everyone as a failed policy.
Senator, I don't think there is any question that the situation in the center of the country, particularly in the Capitol, is bad. And we are working very hard to rectify that.
This whole effort is being undertaken by people who want to do what they think is right for this country, do the best thing they can for the country. The issue is how best to move us forward.
A variety of comments from around Washington today. And I'm joined now by our chief Washington correspondent, George Stephanopoulos, and our senior national security correspondent, Jonathan Karl. John, let me start with you, because this was something of a grilling that George Casey got on Capitol Hill today, and he's up there because he is going to be, or has been nominated to be, the new Army Chief of Staff, and the Senate will have to vote on his confirmation. First of all, is this for show, or is there really some chance that he might not be confirmed as Chief of Staff? And give me some flavor in the nature of the debate. We saw a little bit of it.
Well, I think there's no doubt that Casey will ultimately be confirmed and be confirmed by a wide margin to be the Army Chief of Staff. But this was not just for show. This was an intense hearing. He really got grilled, questioned very toughly, primarily by Republicans, largely by John McCain and by Lindsey Graham, two senators, two Republicans who are in favor of this idea of a surge. But Charlie, some of the more interesting parts of this debate today were where Casey was asked if he agreed with the President of the United States, with the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, with the incoming CENTCOM commander, who have all said that they believe that the policy up till now has been a failure. And Casey said no, he does not believe this has been a failure. He believes that the President's new plan is one that will be essentially an enhancement of the plan that Casey has been controlling and operating largely from Iraq for the last 2.5 years.
But there's a general belief that Casey himself wasn't particularly in favor of a surge.
There's a general belief, and for good reason, behind the scenes. I'm told by people directly involved in this debate that Casey was arguing against the surge. Today what he said is that he believes that the full 5 brigades that is the President's plan, that's about 20,000 troops to go into Iraq, are not necessary. He believes that you only need about 2 brigades. But he said he supports the plan because those 20,000 troops, as you know, Charlie, are not going in right away. They'll be going in over the next few months, and there's the opportunity for the commanders to say they won't need the extra troops. But Casey did seem, at least for part of the testimony today, to be at odds with the President's plan.
And George Stephanopoulos, let me turn to you, because the other half of what's going on today is this negotiating to try to get a resolution in the Senate. And we now have language, I gather, which is generally agreed upon as what will go forward.
That's exactly right. Major Republican and Democratic compromise here. John Warner, the former chairman of the Armed Services Committee, a Republican, joining with the current chairman of the Armed Services Committee, Carl Levin. And as you said at the outset, it does now appear that you have a majority of senators for this bill, all but 2 or 3 Democrats so far, and now you have about 6 to 8 Republicans who have declared for the bill. So that's a majority. What we don't know yet, Charlie, is whether or not there's enough votes to hit that magic number of 60, which would stop a filibuster in the Senate, which would overcome a filibuster in the Senate. And both sides are now furiously whipping in their own caucuses. Democrats trying to get to 60, Republican leadership trying to hold that number down.
But George, what we're debating here is just language, because while the Senate may get enough votes to pass this, it basically doesn't do anything except, Mr. President, we don't fully agree with what you're doing. Oh, by the way, we're going to give you all the money you need to do it.
That's true, but I have to say, I understand why both sides are fighting so hard over this. It may just be language, but for the Senate to go on record and say, we disagree with the President's policy, would have, I think, great political force, even some moral force, and it would kind of ratify where it seems like a lot of the country is right now, at least according to our ABC News poll. But in fact, you're right. One of the ways that Senator Warner has reached out to his fellow Republicans is by including language in this bill that says we will not move to cut off funding for the troops or take further action. That is what has pushed off some of the more liberal Democrats like Russ Feingold of Wisconsin, Chris Dodd of Connecticut, a presidential candidate.
All right, George Stephanopoulos and Jonathan Karl, thank you both. We're going to shift next to Boston, where you've no doubt heard a guerrilla marketing campaign to promote the Cartoon Network's irreverent show Aqua Teen Hunger Force went awry. Today, the 2 men who planted the devices and posted this video on Zebler.com pleaded not guilty to disorderly conduct and placing a hoax device. Now, I've got one of these devices that was found all over Boston yesterday right here with me. The first one was noticed yesterday near a subway station. There, it could be mistaken for a bomb, but up close, well, it does look fairly innocuous. And we noticed that a lot of bloggers knew about the campaign 2 weeks before the Boston police did and before all the panic occurred yesterday in Boston. So we asked Mark Frauenfelder of boingboing.net why many online are asking, what's the big deal?
This whole thing reminds me a little bit of Orson Welles' radio production of War of the Worlds. There was a similar, reaction. People thought that aliens were really attacking, but only in this case, Orson Welles wasn't arrested and no one threatened to sue him either. If it had been Fred Flintstone that were on these Light Bright-like ads, probably would have had a completely different reaction. The city of Boston has been saying, the fact that we respond in this way shows that our Homeland Security system works. But really, if it's going to take them 2 weeks to recognize these things and then misidentify them, to me that seems to say that the system does not work. These things are clearly not bombs. I mean, they were less than an inch thick, and no terrorist is going to make a bomb with a brightly lit cartoon character on it. After 9/11, we have unfortunately been trained to fear everything, even things that we shouldn't be afraid of. I think people just need to step back a little bit, lighten up, and laugh. The fact that they're talking about arresting and imprisoning these kids for putting these signs up, how in any way is that going to help stop terrorism, or how is that going to stop terrorists?
Officials in Boston, however, are certainly not laughing, and just one opinion there. Let us know what you think on our website by clicking on the screen right now. And we're going to move next to our collaboration with Google, the world's leading search engine. And among today's top rising searches is the release date for the 7th and final Harry Potter book. If you haven't Googled it yet, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows will hit shelves on July 21st. And in case there was any doubt about Harry's popularity, the new book, although months away from publication, is already #1 on the Amazon.com. That is 6 months before it comes out. Also rising today, searches for Silvio Berlusconi. The former Italian prime minister isn't in the news for something he said. He's in the news for something he didn't say. At a recent event, Berlusconi was seen flirting with a couple of attractive women. His wife, miffed after not getting a personal apology at home, wrote an open letter on the front page of an Italian newspaper demanding a public apology. Well, tail apparently between his legs, Berlusconi has apologized, asking his wife, in his own open newspaper letter, to take this public testimony that submits to your anger as an act of love. Sometimes we like to get ahead of what you're searching for on Google, and tonight, a late-night comic will celebrate his silver anniversary. David Letterman launched Late Night on NBC 25 years ago today, eventually, as you know, moving to CBS. So we decided to take a look back at some highlights that showcase 3 of Letterman's strong suits: his way with celebrities, his ability to skewer politicians, and his talent for physical comedy.
This is sort of a virgin experience because I've never done a talk show before.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. But made me nervous. Could I say the word virgin?
Yeah.
Could I not? I didn't know.
Well,
But
this is going to be the greatest experience of your life.
And by God, you look like you've been on vacation. You look like $1 million damn. How do you,
Well,
how
I
do you do that?
appreciate
'Cause
that.
I know that campaigning is difficult work. How do you look so youthful and rested?
Fake it.
And that's pretty much how you're going to run the country?
I have a little CO2. All right, take these off me, Sally. Take this one off here, too.
really?
Well, yeah, really.
But it looks really good.
Yeah, okay.
And a happy anniversary to David Letterman. Now to a smoking ban in Paris, a city practically synonymous with smoking. The City of Lights won't be lighting up anymore, at least not in many public places. Here's ABC's Gloria Rivera.
Smoking bans are the norm in the U.S. and in Europe. In countries like Italy, Ireland, and Sweden, they are already in place. Come this summer, here in England, there will also be a ban. But it's in a country where smoking is practically a national pastime. The newest ban takes place. There is no doubt the smoking ban is healthy. But is it French? It was in France Humphrey Bogart smoked his way into love with Ingrid Bergman in Casablanca.
We'll always have Paris.
Perhaps, but now a smoke-free Paris, where morning coffee will no longer come with a morning cigarette. And now in France, the country's 15 million smokers face an $87 fine if caught smoking in public. The world is collapsing, cried just one of many headlines.
Elle a fumé 32 463 cigarettes dans le salon.
But after an edgy ad campaign against smoking, polls show over 70% of the French support the new ban. But if you really want to live a smoke-free life, consider moving to the Himalayas, where in 2004 the government of Bhutan banned smoking and the sale of tobacco. Gloria Riviera, ABC News, London.
And so what are the Parisians going to do with all those cigarette machines in the back of those cafes in the left bank? Well, they might turn them into art dispensers. ABC's Wilhelm Marx explains.
Doesn't seem like a bad idea. But wait a minute, Is that a cigarette machine?
It's one of our most popular products. People come from all over the world asking about it.
But those aren't cigarette brands. They're names of artists. And that's an Automat machine.
For cheaper than a pack of cigarettes now, you can get an original piece of artwork, and how much better for your health is that?
For a fistful of quarters, you can choose from 20 artists in each machine and end up with something that's pretty unique.
They never quite know exactly what they're going to get, but they do know that they're going to get an original work of art. I think that makes it very exciting.
Automat's best-selling artist in 2005 was Herb Hoover, whose pewter cookies and crackers are developing a bit of a cult following online. Herb walked me through the production process for these crackers, in his kitchen. And Herb says that these Automats, which turn old cigarette vending machines into mini art galleries, are a great marketing tool for young artists.
It's a venue to get your work out there. The worst thing an artist can do is stay in their garret.
But despite all those quarters, apparently it's not really about the money.
Oh, it is most definitely about the concept. The profit is not much of a profit.
And as smoking grows less popular, more of these wacky machines get refurbished and installed.
They're everywhere. They're in museums, they're in art stores, they're in Whole Foods stores.
And who knows, as more and more smokers extinguish their butts, the Automat could spread, and a mini Picasso may replace Marlboro. Willem Marks for ABC News, New York.
And that's it for the webcast today. For all of us at ABC News, I'm Charles Gibson. Thanks for taking the time, and click on us again tomorrow.
The president was hit. He is in stable condition.
It is the worst disaster in the history of the American space program.
I've never seen a royal wedding like this.
O.J. Simpson wanted on 2 counts of murder.
Relive the most dramatic days in history with ABC News. Download The Day It Happened today at iTunes.